Record. All right, let me set a
Hey guys,
timer.
welcome back to the podcast, episode 3, post birthday edition,
Episode 3.
talking about product features, blueprint of our business, of our startup, of our project. Roger's asking me how I'm feeling because yesterday we went out and celebrated our co-headlining birthdays. Someone's turning
Co-birthdays.
36, someone's turning 37. We'll let you decide who's who. I'm dragging, man.
Co-birthdays. I
I'm
think it
dragging.
went as well as could be. I think it went better than expected. Seeing it, I was like, I was definitely not on the right page. I know you said like World's End and it just didn't click to me. I've seen the
Yeah.
movie too. And I was
Oh,
like,
really?
okay, but we did it. Hey, we did it. And you know what? I realized I didn't drink as much water as I should have. Like, so that was great. But still got up a little later than usual. Went to the gym still. That made me feel better. So like
That's
hydrate.
wild that you went to the gym, man.
Oh, dude, yeah, I went and actually
Dedication.
had a great workout. Like I was gonna vom, I was gonna throw up a few times, I'm not gonna lie, but just the hydration and the sweating and stuff, it helped me feel a lot better. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. I'm glad that we did that, and hopefully, yeah, I should make it like a yearly tradition.
I've always, and yeah, definitely next year we'll pick another Houston area to just go try to tear up or
Yeah,
get
yeah,
torn
yeah,
up by. But yeah, no, staying hydrated. I told Tom his job was to just give me a water at every bar
yeah,
and just force feed me water, and that seemed to get me to the last spot. I was just really afraid we wouldn't make it to the last spot. Like we would just get
yeah.
sidetracked. And there were so many chances where we could have got sidetracked, and the group was like, "Nah, we don't want to move no more." Like, no, we gotta keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I had that feeling even at the first spot. I was like, oh, all right, but you
Yeah,
go and you keep you get different people to move it different ways,
yeah,
and it's like a shared ownership or responsibility. I heard you were
correct.
giving out jobs all night, which was cool. So I think like giving people ownership in the night like help people because people were like, oh, no, I'm finding a table, and I was like, oh, cool, there's tables everywhere. They're like, no
Yeah, yeah.
to look and like they were like we had tables and people took their jobs very seriously, which I appreciated,
Yeah.
you know?
We were playing a game to try to make it a secret of who, and then at the end, try to guess whose job was what. But just taking in consideration, trying to like have a conversation with the whole group at the end of the night. Plus,
Mhm.
we're already drunk by the 6 point out. There's
Oh
no way to
yeah.
do that. But yeah, no, I thought it'd be fun to like give everyone jobs, and maybe that's gonna be a yearly tradition now.
Yeah. Give everyone gets a job. You show up, you get a job.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh I love it though. It definitely made it more interesting, I think, for everyone, like including myself. I was like, what is that person's job? I don't know. Like I didn't know that you had
yeah,
someone just like running you drinks, like a drink runner
yeah,
or a water runner.
yeah. I had a runner.
That's awesome. I'm definitely gonna keep that in mind for next year. Like your
Yeah,
job is to keep me hydrated because that's where I fell off. I don't even think I drank
yeah.
that much. I did actually drink a lot, but anyways. Hey, kids don't drink. It's not worth it.
Yeah. And Jess was like, do we have to stick to the 40 minutes of spot thing? Like, she's like, people are getting comfortable. Some people are just showing up. I'm like, look, every project needs a ruthless visionary.
Mhm.
That's who I got to be today. Like, I got to make sure we get there. I said, once
Gotta
we
be
get
the
to the last
hard
spot,
ass.
everyone can chill. Everyone can chill. Everyone can do
Yeah,
whatever they
when we
want to
get
do.
when we get to the world's end, then we can hang out. And it was
Exactly.
closed. What the
Yeah. We got
fuck?
lucky,
Or
man. The night, man, there's an alternate universe where that's open and we end on a good note because it devolved
ah.
after that, dude. So I
Yeah,
wish that place would have
it
would have
was
been open.
fate. It was fate that the last place was closed, but also it was also fate that you could see the last place, and it looked great from the inside. Like I've been there
Yeah,
before. We've been there before.
right.
We
Yeah,
yeah, we hung out there. I did not care for that place at all, but I
right.
wanted to go because of how
The
decorated,
razzle
like
dazzle.
Christmassy it looked. I took great
Yeah,
pictures of people with that as a backdrop from the roof of the other bar, and I was like,
right.
man, I want to go in there so bad, but this like the place sucks. Like I did not like it
Yeah.
at all when I went last time with you. But
Speaking of features of
speaking
a
of features,
great bar, let's talk about features of our product.
I like it. I like it. And I think this is something we've kind of pitched around a little bit. Like third episode, looking at features, right? And I guess it comes down to, I think that like in the sense of features, like it's almost like as you start talking about it and building it, the features kind of come in, like what is a must have, what's a nice to have, what's something you don't want, and then like that kind of also to me kind of formulates, your other things too. Like you think you're talking about features, but then when you're thinking about who's going to use those, you can talk about you start thinking about your target market, you start thinking about your business plan, what kind of revenue model are we going to pull in, how are we going to make this, who other, like to make this one thing, who else do we have to bring in to do this, right? So I think that features is definitely like one of the top things to think about in terms of like how I'm going to build this product, obviously, and do people want to use it?
Yeah, you're right. It's all intertwined. Every move you make,
Mhm.
every feature you add, you
Even
got
the
to think of
name.
it. Yeah, you got to think of every feature you're adding has this like, all right, what's the cost of this? What's the return on all the work we're about to do to get this feature added? No, you're right on. It's all intertwined. And what are some of the features that our app has?
So I think for us, it's going to be more along the lines of, and I think because, kind of level set, we're kicking around different ideas of like, hey, for this first season of the episode, like what things are we going to start? Like and we have like a list of ideas like going into the future, but what was something that we can like just kind of like think about a problem in our world and solve? And what it came up was kind of like a do-it-yourself thing, and it's not us, which is the interesting thing. Like the more I looked into this, even today, for like do-it-yourselfers, um, people try, and I think the stat that I found was like something of like, I guess, where was it? It was like 65% of homeowners have started to do DIY project. Now, do they finish it? I don't know. But still, like, so we're not alone when we're trying to like look at our house or our apartment or something like that and try to do something ourselves. And then you kind of start thinking about like, what does that have to look like? Obviously, if you're doing like a do it yourself project management software tool, you want somebody like project management in general, is basically hitting timelines. The more companies I work for, the more I see like project management is a role, but also it's a role that you do in your daily business, usually, right? What do I mean by that? You have to stay on track, right? So you have this huge project, right? So I don't have to like think about it too hard, right? You like a project could be this big thing, like, hey, I want to do like I want to cut my lawn on Friday. So now you have actually two things that are probably the most important in your project management, thought or mindset is you have a date and you have a thing to get done, right? And it can be as simple as that. But sometimes you have to kind of back out of that, right? So something to keep, so, first feature is like something to keep you honest, right? A way to say, hey, I want to do this thing or achieve this thing at on this date, right? So then you think about backing up. Okay, cool. Like that's what I want to do. Like today's Monday. I need to do that on Friday. Cool. Now, what are the things that I can do during the week to make sure that my lawn gets cut by myself, that I cut my lawn on Friday. So now you're thinking about, okay, cool. Like now I have subtasks that I kind of have to make, right? I have to, check my lawnmower. I have to, sometimes they're electric. I gotta plug in the batteries. I gotta, do all these things. You don't want to show up on game day. Friday comes around 5 o'clock. I've been looking forward to this all day, and now my lawnmower doesn't have gas, or my lawnmower, needs a battery charge, which is going to take an hour. There's a lot that can happen in an hour, right? When you're at home, so like, I don't want to do it anymore. So now that kind of shifts to, oh, I'll just cut it on Saturday, right? So you asked a simple question like, what do the features have? And I was like, that's how I backed into a feature. It's like, this is what we wanted to do, make us, keep us honest. I want to cut the grass on Friday. And now we kind of step back to all the sub things that have to go in to kind of get you there, right? But that's kind of what I was thinking about, Oh, first feature, keep us honest, I need to do this thing on this date, right? Second feature, all the little subtasks that kind of go into it that I can add myself or just have the software or the app build it for me, right? Hey, we looked at 10,000 people, that cut their lawn. These are the things that they suggest having you, right? So now I have like that the kind of AI assisted part of it. I have an AI assisted do-it-yourself project manager, right? Where I can take the best. Oh, maybe I didn't even think about that. Do I want a weed eat? Do I have, I pro, I don't know, all those little things, that kind of go into that seemingly easy task of cutting my lawn, break it down to the sub steps to make it easier for me when it's game day and I gotta go.
Yeah, you did a great job of walking us through the timeline function. Like you're gonna say, "Hey, I want to cut grass on Friday." The app's gonna spit it out for you. Here's your timeline. This is everything you need. Practically a recipe for getting your
Yeah,
project done. And one of the other cool features is are those nudges to keep you honest.
yeah,
It's gonna chime in every once in a while. Hey, don't forget, it's you want to cut your grass on Friday, and you need to get some gasoline in the tank. So make sure you go fill that up today. Like it'll have nudges for you. And then these steps that it's generating when you say, hey, um, C-task, I want to cut my grass on Friday. That's my project. It's gonna spit out your template, your kind of itinerary, your project checklist, your to-do list. And that's AI generated. And eventually we're talking about one of the features being um kind of like community templates. Like, 60% of people use this template for this project. So maybe you want to go with the human made one. Um, Also, and as part of your checklist, it's gonna give you that buy now function where you're just like, hey, you know what? It's gonna take you this many hours and this much estimated cost to complete this project. Would you rather just click here and our sponsor, maybe it's our affiliate partner like TaskRabbit or something, we can just send somebody to your house and they'll cut it for you Friday. We have that, get out of jail free card. Well, not free, but you have to pay somebody, but you have that off ramp on the freeway. If at some point you're just in over your head on a step, whether it's planning a trip to Antarctica or cutting your grass on Friday, it's going to give you that off ramp. So that's another feature. And throughout the way, when you hit that template and it gives you that to-do list, you're also going to see that supplies and that material list where it's saying, hey, you got Home Depot around the corner, you might need to get new clippers. So there's this and that. So we have all these different features as part of this app to help you get your projects done.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that part of that, which I kind of love you talk about, was like kind of some of the things that maybe are a little bit easier to knock out. And easy is kind of really subjective, I guess. What is easy to make? Like both of us, neither of us have, a technical coding background, which is going to be interesting how we choose this route, for like something that is definitely tech or code based. We're trying to, figure out a way to use, AI agents to help us make like a code version or base or product that we can use to get out there. But I think that, part of it is like, what are we realistically could do now versus like in the future? Because that takes you to like, okay, cool. What's the MVP now? And then what's kind of like those wish list items that, when we're going full throttle and we have some developers working for us, whether we do it ourselves or, we contract out or something like that, when we have kind of like that resource available, that muscle to flex, pulling in those kind of like the perfect example is kind of like the buy now feature that you were talking about, right? Like, hey, great, like, and I use the example of lawnmower because, I mean, I live in a townhome. My yard is this big and still like for me, like, I'm like, oh man, like this is, it doesn't take that long. It takes, an hour to, actually I cut my lawn with a weed eater, so
Yeah,
that's a,
yeah,
so, and then, but you still got to do that. You got to bag it up. You got to have the time, you got to, all that, all those little things add up. And, when I timed it, it was like an hour, hour and a half, so that time also means money to me. So if I have like people coming over, I might not have that time or I want someone to do it now. And I like your kind of like buy now thing. I forgot like that concept is kind of cool. And what I liked about that was kind of like, it always makes me think of eBay when I would like try to buy stuff on eBay. It was like, yeah, cool. I can like bid on it for 5 days, or I can just say,
right.
boom, like take my money.
Right.
And that's kind of how I see this. Like, at one point, like that trade off is going to start making sense. Where like, oh, cool, like yeah, the app told me, it's going to take, an hour, 2 hours of my time actually doing the project, or I can just hit buy now. I'll have a task grabber come up in the next 5 minutes and they'll knock it out in half the time or something like that. So I do
Yeah.
like that. And but that might not be, or it doesn't sound like it will be, an out of the gate type situation, but it's something that we can work to over time. Because then we get in the concept of like MVP versus like, your actual full-fledged product that you're kind of like jammed and moving on when you have more resources. So I think that is an interesting aspect of it as well, which I'm excited to kind of like think about how we build that, right? Like what makes sense to start from the start, right? Versus kind of like things that we're going to add in over time and like a
I think
product
you
roadmap.
exactly. And I think you did a really good job of bringing up like earlier saying like, all right, what features when you're debating features and adding stuff, what's must have, what's nice to have,
Hmm.
what's something down the road. Like season one, I think if we boil it down to like, look, this is something we literally have to make, and it's just me and you, and we're not developers. Maybe it is just a to-do list plus scheduling function. That's all it does. Puts it on your calendar. You don't even you nudge yourself. It's gonna put it on the calendar for
Yeah.
you. You just set your little, 1 hour before, event kind of alarm, and
Yeah.
that's season one. Also, when you talked about cutting your own grass and this like the unforeseen little things that like totally derail a project.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
oh, I got to bag up my grass. Like, oh shit, I don't have any bags.
Yeah,
You know, or
that's
like
happened to me
that
before.
will just ruin all, like just ruins all the progress you made for cutting the grass. Like you just got
Yeah.
a fucking lump of shit somewhere.
Yeah. That's happened to me before where it was like literally, oh, dude,
Yeah.
like I don't have any bags. And then so I was pulling out like little bags, from like HEB and stuff, like the grocery
Oh my
store.
God.
So I had like I had like 20 of
There you
those
go.
bags
You
that I
could
just
do
kind of,
that.
yeah, dude, like
There's nothing wrong with that.
but that's a perfect example of like how like an app can help you think about that, but also say, give you other options. Like, oh, fuck it, like you don't have any big bags, then try these. You have a bunch of small bags, like so that
Yeah.
was kind of like, but that could have like totally derailed it. Also, like one time, like this, and that's why like the DIY project manager to me with like notifications kind of it was is interesting because I ran into a situation again cutting the grass, which is not a huge thing, especially for me, but it still kind of like gets derailed really easily when I go like, okay, cool, like I'm gonna go cut with this weed eater and stuff, and I don't even have any string. So now I
Oh,
have to
right.
stop. Yeah, no, dude, now I'm thinking like, oh, dude, I just stop now, and I'm already in the zone. I got my AirPods in, I'm
Right.
like ready to go and stuff, and I have this like hour, window where it realistically makes sense. Otherwise, like it's running into other things I want to get done. But it was like, okay, cool, like. I don't even have the string. Dang. So now I'm
A
punting
five
it to
minute
the next
nudge could have
day.
saved
Yeah,
you
because
that
I have to go
hour.
to Home Depot, which is,
Right.
not far, but also
That's a
not
whole other
close.
project
It
at that
makes
point.
it, yeah, exactly. Oh, dude, didn't I mean, exactly,
Yeah.
So I think like stuff like this can really make sense, especially for like small projects, because we're talking about something small here. Like when we talk about something that's even bigger from a DIY perspective, like painting a room. Oh my gosh, the things, the rabbit
Right.
holes you can go in, and the ease of which you can get derailed is like astounding when you have to like do something that requires more steps. So I think it's a very simple, maybe not novel concept, but a very simple concept that I think can be applicable to a lot of people. Because it is for me, because it is a project, and I think that's kind of like at the core of like what I'm excited to do. This is like I don't want to just like try to make products, make products. I want to try to solve problems, and I think we're both kind of on board with that. Like we don't want to just make something. I think the whole DIY, the AI powered DIY project manager came up is because when we were kind of jamming out, at dinner, we were just like, oh yeah, like this is a project, this is an issue that I have. I was like, you know what, actually me too, So it was like you get a couple people with the same issue, then maybe, and fairly, maybe not, we have different levels of like what we use technology for, right? So we're coming at it from different perspectives, but with the same problems. Like, oh, cool, like this might be something that other people have a problem with too. And I think now we're at that stage where we can like see if that's our hypothesis. Other people have this problem. We make an MVP or something like that, or a video or something that shows that case. Now we can really start testing if people have that same problem or see that issue, Because I think
Right.
even when we looked it up, like it was nothing obvious that in the market to solve that,
Right.
which is weird because there's tons of project management softwares for your everyday work, like at an office, but there's nothing when you come home unless you use those same products, which is kind of like a square peg round hole type situation where like, I guess you can use it, but it's not built for that. So it's not going to be as efficient for the things you want to do at the home as possible?
Yeah, and I think it'd be really interesting once the app's up and running, if we get that far, if we actually get the funding to make it. It would be really interesting to see the churn rate of the app. When do people drop out? Do they drop
Yeah.
out after maybe the first missed nudge? Do they drop out once they've completed one project on it and go, you know what, this was just a little too
Yeah.
clunky for me. And well, you talked about kind of our mission being to solve problems. Like, I think. Also, maybe it's a pride thing, but I would love if every time we make something, our goal is to be like the Ziploc
Yeah.
of it. You know, like the brand synonymous with that task. Because it's like, yeah, there might, if we dig real deep, we might find some competitors, we might find something that's similar who could cover some of the bases. But who's the Ziploc? Where's it? Where's the number one hit when you search it? What is it? And how good is it? Do I want to do when I look at the competitor when we're doing the market research? Do I go, oh, it's already made. Let's move on to something else, or do I go,
Yeah.
I think we got a chance here. Like I think this is
Yeah.
something where we can compete.
Yeah.
Um,
And oh, sorry, go on.
no, and then I think you made another really good point about that buy now function, saying, at some point you might just want to tap out because it's going to save you time. It's going to save you time. And I think what's really going to rule that is just everyone's different. If I'm broke and I have nothing but time, that buy now function, I'm never touching it. But if I have a side gig and maybe I can do an extra 2 hours of my side gig versus cutting the grass for 2 hours, maybe it makes more sense for me to just to buy now.
Yeah,
So, so these projects, with or without a project management tool, our personal time and our personal time is worth a different amount for each person. So
exactly.
that buy now function is gonna be really interesting to see how often it gets used.
No,
And it
yeah.
would be cool to have a sponsorship or some kind of partnership with TaskRabbit or Fiverr or whichever of these outsourcing um, companies are. Maybe we can get reduced prices because we're going to be dealing with volume. People are going to be using that off ramp all the time, and so maybe we make sense to partner up.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think like there's going to be a situation where we can kind of like fake the funk on that, where like we are the task rabbit, or we have our own, we have our own kind of like,
Right. Yeah.
well,
We can slowly
exactly.
build it out. Yeah.
Exactly. And also like one thing that I've like done and seen companies do as well is kind of fake it in a way of just putting it there. Like, oh, test the buy, like, putting the buy now function button on there and it doesn't go anywhere. Like it
Right.
basically
And to
it
see
says,
how many
oh,
people click it.
yeah, exactly. But you kind of you can build that into the product, kind of get that early signal, which is just data that you'd want to knew anyway. To like, oh, 10 people out of the 20 that saw this hit the buy now button. They got an error message or not an error message. You kind of want to oh, great, like feedback, blah, blah,
Coming
blah.
soon.
Give them some
Yeah.
type of pop-up. Yeah, yeah. Now we're trying to learn from you, but also, yeah,
Yeah.
we're trying to
Yeah.
use this to learn a little bit too at the same
Yeah.
time. Like, thanks, it's been recorded for future situations. But yeah, I think that gets us, and I think that we can get to like a really bare bones, but also problem solving version of the software that we can kind of like dog food ourselves, use ourselves to see if that really kind of makes sense, for the grander scheme of things. One thing, and maybe I think we can drop like show notes, right? In the
Yeah.
podcast. Okay, cool. Because I
Of course.
what I have is like these like the drop like a Dropbox example of like them building an MVP. It probably doesn't play well over like I think I can play it, but it's basically a 3 minute video. And so what Dropbox did, basically they had a new, not novel concept of like file sharing. When Dropbox came out, it's synonymous now with kind of like file sharing, things like that. But before it was kind of like the Dropbox it is now, box, it was just, well, it was just like one of the many options to file share, right? Even though there was competitors, there was no great solution for that, right? So, there's a bunch of companies that were doing it. No one like really, really got it right. And I think that was a perfect opportunity that Box kind of jumped in, was scrappy with it, and learned a lot of things. One thing they did is they made an MVP video. And I know like we talk about like MVP from a product perspective, like the most viable product, right? Not
Hmm.
most valuable player, most viable product, right? So the thing that you don't, it's not necessarily a situation where you build something with the least features. You just try to build it in a way that it doesn't cause as much lift as a full kind of like blown out thing, but it's good enough to learn off of, right? But their MVP for Dropbox originally wasn't even the product, it was a video. So even when we start thinking about the things that can start, and what they did with that basically was they used it as a way for people to see what Dropbox, the value was bringing, the ease of use of it, but also got people like excited to like sign up for the beta testing. So I think that can be a position we come from, where we kind of make an MVP, maybe even an MVP video, which I think is definitely within. I think first we can make an app using shit like stuff like Replit. We can definitely make an app. Now, what that looks like is probably going to be pretty scaled back, but it can be a proof of concept. But we can also do an MVP video where we kind of show like us using it as a use case example, and see if people, like, we're hypothesizing that they're going to want to use it, but see if that gets people's interest enough to like sign up and give us an email for the beta. So I'm definitely kind of seeing there's that world we can be very scrappy, use the things that we know how to do now to kind of get that proof of concept from an MVP product, which could be a video or something like that. That's kind of a little bit more attainable for us, being non-developing people.
And we can always A/B test it. Maybe one's a landing page with the features and see how many people click through to download or try it out. And maybe we have a video and the video MVP, see how many people go to the download once they kind of seen it. Um, yeah, and I was gonna ask you, that was gonna be our kind of our next topic. We're not developers, but we're gonna do this. So, take us through some of the tools that we could use to make this.
Yeah, no. So I think there's a lot of great options out there. And even like when I think about tools, I think about, uh obviously like the stuff that makes sense right now is AI, right? I mean, because like for me, even from a work and a life perspective, it's been something that's allowed me to kind of be more efficient. Everyone's like, oh, it's 10x's you, da da da. And I think for different jobs, it does kind of have like a 10xing effect. For me, I don't know if a 10x is my output from a personal or professional perspective, but it definitely is some version of like makes me more efficient, right? Um, so I think that's kind of where we can start with, right? And you can use it in a lot of ways. I think one of the ways that I'm excited to use it the most is kind of two things. One for marketing. So the ability for it to kind of just spit you out variations, right? Putting in ChatGPT and saying, hey, we have this product. We need, 10 tagline variations. But we want it within this constraint of like our branding, our messaging, the positioning we're going for, and allowing it to just spin and create things that we wouldn't even think of. Then using our own
Right.
best judgment to kind of refine that,
Correct.
and kind of make it more usable for us. I think is going to be interesting. So from a marketing perspective, creating that is going to be great. I think also what it allows us to do is be more creative also. So things like ideogram, making images and videos. Canva also has options to create videos and images, right? So we're not copywriters, but we're doing it with AI assisted. We're not, I guess creative designers, but we're able to make those things ourselves and use them on our website. But also, I think the thing that so those are kind of like the easier ones. But you've heard me talk about Replit a few times, and that's what I'm kind of like really salivating to get really good at. Because it's basically an AI agent engine that allows you to basically native language talk to it. And what I mean by that, it's like, hey, I need a website or I need an app that does X, Y, and Z, right? And it will do all the background Python, JavaScript coding for you. And it gives you those output files. So if you want to take that and put it on a different platform, you can do that. But for us, it allows us to get kind of like a really usable scaled down version of our product to start getting it in people's hands, into our own hands, to kind of dog food it ourselves. So even though we're not developers, I think that the where we're sitting at with AI allows us to not be developers, but like at least have output that makes sense that we can start using ourselves, right? And I think eventually it does make sense to pull in someone who, knows it, is more technical, pulling in a CTO or something like that. But for right now, I think this is good enough to get us where we want to go in the short term.
Yeah, and Replit's such a great tool. I'm so glad you found it. We're being scrappy. We're trying not to spend too much, but there's some places where you're gonna have to spend. And maybe through being scrappy, it gives you more of a cushion to absorb those expenses. How much are we gonna spend on Replit?
So Replit's only, I think, $25 a month for the paid version. You can still use it. We got 10 minutes remaining. Speaking of being
Go
scrappy,
for
10
it.
minutes left
There you
before you
go.
kicked
On
out.
our free
So
on our
yeah.
free Zoom meeting.
Yeah, so so it's $25 a month to use it like to its fullest extent of what it can do, but there is like a version of that where you don't necessarily have to pay to get a certain level. But I think for what we want, it's going to be that. So, $25 to be able to like have the capacity to develop an app. And then you still have other like costs associated on the back end, which are basically like productionizing it and scaling it, right? So basically, when you want to get it to, be publicly available, like a landing page, like not just a landing page for us, but something that other people can use, then you have that to think about, like consumption based. But that's also, it's good that it allows you to not just make the app, but also like publish it and like you have people like use it literally on their phones or on their desktop.
Yeah, and in a weird way, we're building C-Task with a makeshift C-Task. We're
Right.
using ChatGPT to kind of set the template up for us, like what steps do we have to take,
Hmm.
and those steps are kind of what we're doing this podcast for. Each step is one of the steps into making the app. We're using Replit to actually design it. We're yeah, eventually any of this could have been all right, look, we're in over our heads, let's buy now. Let's just offload this to somebody else to do. Let's
Yeah.
skip this step. But we're
And
trying
the
to
thing I
learn, we're
like
trying to
about
be
Replit
scrappy, we're
too,
doing it.
I think what I like about Replit too is like when we go through, because we already talked about kind of like some of the things that it kind of has to have from an app perspective. Reminders, subtasks, notification nudges, pre-built templates and stuff. Those are all things that you can literally put that into Replit and it spit you out some code. and a product that is going to try its best to kind of like align the, oh, it needs to have X, Y, and Z, right? So all those product features, you can roll that into it to like spit that up for you.
Beautiful. Yeah, another thing you kind of said earlier about like the time management part and the you don't know what you don't know kind of stuff. Like we'll call it a simple task of cutting your grass on Friday. That's one
Mm.
thing. But painting a room, I mean, also another simple task when you look at it compared to like maybe starting a startup.
Yeah.
But painting a room, even not having the right, plastic tape
Hmm.
or not having the right, brown paper to cover the floor, or not remembering to move things to the center of the room. Like you don't have to move things all the way out. Just you can put them in the center of the room like professional painters do. There's all sorts of little things that could really derail your time management if you just don't know what you don't know. And that's why it's great to have it be AI powered, to be community generated, to have, 70% of people use this template. There's a tried and true to it, even though it's your first time ever doing something.
Exactly. And this is definitely going to be for that when people kind of like have nowhere to start. Of course, you can go and Google it. You can go like look up other places, but it's still the act of putting it into something that's usable for me right now, making those subtasks, making those reminders, and I see this as like a lot of prep work too. Like I love cooking. Cooking is great. Cooking is so much better when you do the prep work. Like
Yeah.
getting your salts ready, measuring out your stuff, having those things in a row. So when it's game time and you gotta cook, you can just vibe and zone and like really do your thing versus like, oh shoot, I need a tablespoon of paprika, but my stuff is already cooking. So like having all that, like us doing the prep work, and that's kind of how I see this app going for us is really, really, yes, helping you execute, but doing the prep work for you. Those little details that like, even if you're a seasoned vet of painting a room, maybe when you've done it, 1,000 times, my dad was a painter growing up. That's why that was like a little tricky to me because it's like it's
There you
one of
go.
those simple things that's not really simple because it's the culmination of a lot of little things and a lot of prep work and getting that tape ready and pushing things to the middle. And those are things you can do during the week before game time to help you prep to make your game time easier and more, and really show the quality of work, right? When when you don't have that blue tape, you see those lines all squiggly, you're like, oh man, like this is not the business, man.
Yeah. No, it's ideally I'm a lazy person, so I would love if everything I ever did was very Chipotle out, where I just get my chicken out of this box, I get my corn out of that box, I get my lettuce out of this box. And I think there's a really big market for let us do the prep work for you. If we remember not too long ago, Blue Apron was a hit. HelloFresh
Yep.
was a hit. They send you
Yep.
the stuff, they let you turn the oven on. They let you
Yep.
put it in the pan, but literally just these many walnuts is all you need for this recipe. Like no waste. Here's all you need. And eventually that was one of the season 20 features of CTAS, where
Yeah.
we'll just send you the package for cutting your grass.
Yeah, here you go.
We'll send you the stuff for painting. Like you don't have to go nowhere. All this stuff's gonna be at your door. Happy cutting.
Just have
Um,
fun. Go with
yeah,
it.
exactly.
But yeah,
And
no, I
that
get it.
and
I
that
get
just
it.
huge, huge what you said. Like every project when it really comes down to it is did you prep or not?
Did you prep?
That's going to be the big differentiator between you taking, 100% of the time to do it, or you took 200% of the time to have to do this project.
Exactly. And again, the vets are gonna know it, right? The muscle memory, that's how it works. You've done it 1,000 times, you know everything you need, right? But there are those novices and those beginners and even vets that just kind of like love that kind of like granularity. But so I think it's gonna be a great one. And I know we only have 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left. We have the timer going now. I'm glad that they added a timer because before Zoom was like, hey, you have 7 minutes left.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
was just like, you have to figure it out on your own. Like, is it, but now I see they have like a timer, which I love, which is great.
And
It was
speaking, I
always like,
mean,
hey,
we're on the feature episode, and you just pointed out a feature of Zoom.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
It was
that's
like,
a
hey,
very
you have 10
useful
minutes
feature,
left. And they just leave you there. You're like, well, I
right?
mean, now I have to keep in mind of that. But okay, so I just want to kind of tie this back to also kind of like looking at, um, every time I think about something, because yeah, it sounds great or whatever, it sounds good on paper, I get it. But what one thing I try to think about is kind of like the addressable market. And so I tried to do like you could do like market analysis kind of two ways. You can go top down, you can go bottom up, right? A bottom up is
Right.
always confusing to me. So I like to kind of do both and to see if I get a number that makes sense, when you go top down and bottom up. But basically, so for a top down analysis, it's really simple, right? You kind of just look whole numbers, right? So for this one, I started like, hey, like how many households are there in the United States, right? So what I came for, and we can put these links into the show notes as well. It was like a Statista like graph. It was like 145 million households. I haven't like checked further than that, but because it was always giving me like percentages, I just wanted numbers. How many households are in the United States? I came up with 145 million, and then I had another. I did another type of look, and I was like, okay, how many like what percentage of households do DIY projects, right? And apparently, like 75% from the sample that I found or the report that I found, 75% of homeowners have tried to do a DIY project. It doesn't say they succeeded, it says they tried, right? So then
Right.
when you look at those, okay, 145 million, 75% of them, that gets to 109 million households in the United States alone that have tried a DIY project, right? So that's kind of what I'm thinking of when I'm saying top-down approach, right? So now we kind of have like a solid number that we can say, okay, like this can start making sense in terms of like putting it together, right? And then from there, it's really simple to kind of layer on like what does that mean in money, right? Let's say we charge $5 a month, as an example, that's our revenue model, monthly subscription fee. That gets you to about $6.5 billion a year market. Like so in the United States alone, at the rate we're going at, $6.5 billion a year. Now, for perspective though, because now it's like, okay, is that big or is that small? It's a big ass number, but where is it relatively? So when you look at like the learning management system, and I just kind of pulled a random industry that I kind of know, and it was like the learning management system, right? And as an example, distance learning and stuff like Canvas and Blackboard. So that world, right, sits at about 22 billion in 2023. So it's not a huge number, but just kind of give us some comparables across. But that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I say like top-down approach.
Yeah, that's a good way to start gauging, how much interest you could possibly have and how much of a community you're going to try to build. Um, I think also kind of not talking, staying with the Blue Apron idea, um, how much were people willing to pay to have their meals sent to them?
Hmm.
You know, I mean, if you deduct the price of food itself, I mean, really, people are paying for the convenience of having everything delivered to them, maybe $1, $2 a meal.
Exactly.
So then you think about that for the week. So maybe people are paying for Blue Apron exclusively, maybe $10 a week. So maybe it makes sense for a similar service like we're offering, maybe $10 a month,
Yeah.
So we can reverse engineer these numbers, but it's never going to be as accurate as you want it to be. But that's the experiment of it. And do you
Yeah.
want to say before we get cut off?
Uh, just start, like
Yeah.